It happened like in the midnight in my time, and I think a lot of people overseas are all, I mean, overseas and locally are all watching this case. It's not everyone. There are still 36 people who pled guilty that still are waiting their verdict. But I think this is something that everyone have been waiting for over years. The trial started over a year ago, and they were first officially charged 3 years ago. So it took a very long time for this prosecution process, and finally we're seeing it to reaching the end soon.
Yeah, we're just seeing Lawrence Lau on the screen there. He was one of the two who were found not guilty. Why do you, it's so unusual in a case in either China or Hong Kong now for somebody to be found not guilty. Why do you think two of them escaped this guilty verdict?
Well, I think it takes a bit of time for us to get to the bottom of the verdict, but I wouldn't read too much into the unconviction because although two of them are not convicted, I know that the prosecution has said that they will appeal. And so it could be a strategy for the government trying to say that, you know, we have rule of law, you know, we have justice in court. But bear in mind that the prosecutors and judges who are handling these cases, they're all voluntarily participating in presiding in these cases. They are designated by the government to rule on these cases. And so they have all kind of have their own political stance and leaning toward the government. So I wouldn't read too much about it. And I think again, for the two people who are also unconvicted, they also hope the world can look at the full verdict instead of focusing on them. So. Yeah.
A lot of this case seems to be based on preemptive action against people who were really just trying to preserve Hong Kong's freedoms.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a way to send chilling effect to the entire city. And remember that these people are probably the most known activists, advocates in the pro-democracy camp. And when the first arrest came about, it was definitely a shock to everybody in the city. It was the biggest national security law case. There hasn't been any arrest that's got to so large scale, and it all happened all in one morning. Everyone is scammed. It's all ramped up in the courtroom. So it's a really big political gesture message from the government that if you take on a leading role in a movement, they will try to go after you. These are people ranging from 27-year-old student activist to a 68-year-old former opposition lawmakers. And when the primary election happened, the national security law was just imposed. But because it was so vaguely written and it was a new law, there was no precedent. No one really knows the implication of it, what's the scale of it, how the government is going to put it in use. So when the arrest happened and they were denied bail, since then, it was definitely something that the city were put in shock.
Yeah. The authorities arrested another 6 activists for sedition under a new security law. Now, this was the first since under the new security law, the first since the law was passed back in March. Do you expect to see more arrests based on this new law?
Yes, I think there will be more repressive crackdown on people in Hong Kong under this new security law, which a lot of us basically name it as the NSL 2.0, which expands the definition of national security crimes and extends the sentences for that. So I think basically it puts everyone around the world in danger for criticizing the Chinese and Hong Kong government and engaging in any activities that they deem threatening to China's national security. And we're not just talking about individuals or citizens in Hong Kong. We're talking about an extradition effect that applies to every single people, including me, who are residing in the U.S. and people, Hong Kong dissidents all scattered around the world.
Yeah. And, to that point that you are now scattered around the world, you may still be reachable, but it's probably much safer for you to be fighting this battle from outside of Hong Kong at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say I'm in a better position to speak up. But again, I remember last time when I was on the show, I also mentioned about the transnational repression by the CCP. It's getting more and more severe. It's a tactic that the CCP has been using to hunt down dissidents that fled their opposition, their oppression, and so we have seen this from the secret police stations. We've seen it from Confucius Institutes, and now we're also seeing that in Hong Kong Economic and Trade offices. There were arrests made by the UK and German government on agents that are related to the HKETO that are actively spying activists located in other countries. And so these offices are all located all around the world, including in the US. And we're raising awareness on how these offices are basically conducting espionage and surveillance on activists like me.
And you know, that's such a great point you make, because it really then behoves the countries, Australia, Germany, the UK, America, to be alert to this. The relationships with China are very important sometimes to those countries, but to be alert to the dangers that democracy activists face who are residing in those countries.
Yeah, well, it's also very unfortunate to feel that, for me, I fled the oppression from China. I left Hong Kong in 2020, and now I'm in what we call like a free and safe environment, but then I'm still subject to CCP's transnational repression. So I'm technically not safe anywhere because of how the CCP has extended their reach virtually to basically every single corner in this world. So I think it's a matter that the democratic allies have to address, and they have to collaborate with each other to tackle this transnational repression. And I do believe that the U.S. is leading on this, and I think that the U.S. should put more resources into kind of working with democratic allies, including Australia, the UK, Japan, Taiwan, to tackle this all together internationally, because it's really hard to just face this on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we appreciate you still speaking out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.